UBC Farm is a really multi-dimensional learning environment that combines academic and research with a community farm with production. And one of the advantages to having research happen on a farm that's fully functioning in production is that we really steward the land here. So it's this place where any day that you show up, you can have a researcher here, you can have a student doing an internship, and you can have a kid running around you who's learning about insects in the ground. So I think that that's such a unique experience that not all universities have the opportunity to provide the community and their students. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to look at the emissions that are given off by the plants and by amendments that are added to the soil. So a lot of times the knowledge that farmers have is either passed down from generation or sort of a bit of intuitive knowledge of what they see the plants reacting to. Right. But it's great to have science come in and be like, oh, so you actually thought you needed to apply X amount per hectare or acre, but what we found in our research is that you can actually apply a lot less and your crops will still respond. And so by applying a lot less, we're actually going to have a lot less of a greenhouse gas emission. I think it's always a tough balance in terms of sustainability, and I think sustainable is such a word that is thrown around, like we are sustainable. It's like, what does sustainable mean? One of the biggest pushes for sustainable food systems is less distance traveled. You know, like why do we get lettuce from Mexico in the height of summer when we have a number of farms in the area that can produce us with lettuce in the height of summer? Governments need to support smaller farmers. I think that's the biggest issue, because at the moment everyone who I know who farms doesn't really earn very much money, and farmer burnout is really high and really common. And there's a lot of infrastructure costs, like with the cost of land at the moment. It's like we have these amazing growing regions. We're surrounded by like Fraser Valley, Zone 1, like amazing growing areas. And it's so expensive that if people want to get into it, who want to grow sustainable food, to have more sustainably, organically grown food access for people, they have a hard time getting in because they just purely can't afford to. And I find it super interesting that the government will hop in and pay for you once you're ill, but if you want to choose this type of food that is like proven to help reduce diabetes, to help reduce heart disease, stroke, all of that can be brought back down to food. And so it's not so much that we don't have the money, it's just the allocation of funds. And again, that goes back down to values. So I think that until our government or until the people stand up and say, this is what we want, this is where we want our government to spend our funds, it's going to continue to be wheat, soy, and cattle that get all of the funding. So we sell to a really specific demographic of restaurants, and that's great because they're choosing us. They are choosing to put their money where their mouth is, which is great. And there's, I think, a desire for more restaurants to have more locally sourced organic food, but money does factor in, you can't run at a loss. And I feel like the more you can bring people here to understand the physical work involved in growing food without a lot of machinery, really impacts and changes people's perspectives and values on food, because food is a value. Where you spend your money is a value, and spending money on food is a value choice. We also have tried this year, we're going to try again to bring chefs from the other restaurants that we sell, to bring them to the farm and to get their apprentices to come out here so that they understand from a young age in their career the importance of like why this is valuable and why you should appreciate it.
FABLE stands for Farm to Table, which is essentially like anything that we can find in the local area.
I think the underlying value that we have is that we just try to make people's days better serving donuts. I think part of it is like the environment, the sort of the city of Vancouver, the mountains, the trees. Like you're much closer to nature, and I think that people inherently just have like a better feel or a closer connection with the environment as a result of just being able to see the ocean, the mountains, the trees, all those things really close by.
Basically, when we, if we're like creating a new menu item, we get sent lists from all the different farms in the area. They'll tell us what's available, how long it's going to be available for, how much they can produce every week, and then we sort of judge what we're going to make using that information. Like some of our seafood comes from like way up north, like probably close to Alaska, and then like our main ones are in like Abbotsford, Maple Ridge, places like that, and then also past Whistler, and that's sort of like our main area that we try and stick to.
I think from a moral standpoint, it's just really important to source locally.
Yeah.
People are more concerned with the quality and how close to home they're getting it. I think that customers are looking for that now more than ever. But as we've grown, it's becoming increasingly difficult to actually get products as close to home as possible, just because of the volume, the size that we need. So then we've had to go a little bit further and sort of look at Canada as a whole and try and get those products within the country. So.
Probably the biggest challenge is like their production. They're very limited. Like if we have a week of bad weather, which we can in Vancouver out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden we're completely out of our product. Whereas if you went from like a larger supplier, you can get anything any time of the year, no matter what the season, no matter where it's from, it's always going to be there. A lot of our suppliers, because they are so small, they're not doing daily deliveries. So most of them we get once or twice a week. So it's a little bit hard, especially for the more delicate ingredients, like trying to store them until your next delivery, and like you might need to buy it from one guy on Monday and then another guy on Wednesday and then another guy for the weekend, and just sort of like spread it out, which creates a lot more work and organization, but it's worth it in the long run.
I think also there's just been a huge movement on the marketing side of things. It's become sort of like a value add for businesses to highlight the fact that everything they get is local, because it builds trust. Like I said before, it really builds trust with the customers. It just adds value to the country, to the province. And then for me personally, like I said, I just think it's just the right thing to do. Like it's not extraordinary to source locally. Like I think it's what you just should do. It's very wrong, in my opinion, to not do that thing. And that's what should be highlighted. I think that it's not really extraordinary to source locally. It's just kind of what you do. Sustainable food to me means taking a moral stand for quality and for where things come from. I think sustainable means respecting your environment. I think sustainable means sourcing things as close to where you live as possible and staying within those bounds as far as what you eat, and thinking about how far something has to travel to get to your plate.
One of the biggest things in talking about food sustainability is, sort of that idea of like treat others the way you would like to be treated. And I think in the food policy, it's like support others the way that you would like to be supported.
Anyone that, and it's not necessarily just in food, anyone that produces something that is, it's not going to like harm any future generations of doing the same, or like.
I think Michael Pollan always phrased it really well when he would say, the North American food system is built on how much can I get for as cheap as possible, and that's just not serving us well.
From a moral standpoint, it's just really important to source locally. I unfortunately, I think that the bottom line has in the past been a more important value for a lot of businesses, and that's starting to change, where people are more concerned with the quality and how close to home they're getting it. Everything's sort of come full circle to more of like scratch-made products, sourced close to home. Those are all things that people identify with, and that builds trust with your customers as well.
I mean, I think everyone's really supportive in the area. We see a lot of the same faces coming back, which is always a good sign. It's good as well. It's like it's easy to stray away from it and go the easy route, but at the same time, we have all the staff believe in it, and they kind of like hold you accountable for following that.
I actually think it would be more interesting and more valuable if the public sort of started to call out places that don't source locally and stopped making the fact that people source locally such a marketing tool. Like we don't really, scream and shout about it, because I think you just sort of should do it. And if you're not, then that's the thing that should be highlighted.
If we don't sustain it, then it's going to ruin the planet, and there's going to be a whole lot of people in a lot more trouble than there already are when it comes to being able to eat quality food. So I think that's probably the the biggest issue. And
If we care about sustainability and we want to move sustainability forward, we really need to look at sort of valuing ourselves and valuing the people around us, and that includes farmers, and that includes chefs who are willing to buy the farm fresh food, and to support farmers markets and the businesses that are around you that are trying to create a sustainable ecosystem of people.